We're coming into the season of joy and of hope. The hope is there for us. After Christmas, straight away we will be having Chinese New Year in a few months' time, and hopefully when we buy new clothes, we can still fit in it. The joy is the amount of food that we're going to eat. The turkey this Christmas. Chinese New Year is going to come soon. Why don't you look at your friend beside you and ask them, are you happy to be here this morning? Are you happy that we're in the season of Christmas already? You are not very happy. Maybe, in the Christmas party that you are planning in your zone, that turkey you can send to my zone 3. Zone 3, we'll be having it at KL Central's loft. You can send the turkey over to us, Are you happy to be here in this season of Christmas, YM? Right? And, there's a lot of things that we're always thankful for during Christmas, like what Josh really asked us to do when we were praising and worshiping God was to thank God for all that He has done for us. And not just that, it is that He came and died for us because He first loved us. There's plenty for us to be thankful for, to be joyful for. And this morning I believe there is an abundance for us, prepared, waiting for us, and we can continue. We can continue to be happy and thankful for this thing that we are going to receive in a while. Reading from Colossians chapter 1, for the passage for this morning, Colossians chapter 1, verse 15 to 23. If you can have the verse on the screen, we want to read together. It's okay? And I'll read. If you have your Bibles with you, digital or hard copy, we will read from Colossians chapter 1, verse 15. And it says this: the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in Him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or powers or rules or authorities, all things have been created through Him and for Him. He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. And He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything He might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all His fullness dwell in Him, and through Him to reconcile to Himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through His blood shed on the cross. Once you were alienated from God and were enemies in your minds because of your evil behavior. But now He has reconciled you by Christ's physical body through death to present you holy in His sight, without blemish and free from accusation. If you continue in your faith, established and firm, and do not move from the hope held out in the gospel. This morning, if you're taking notes, the title of my message is The Hope That You Already Have. The hope that you already have. When Paul was writing this letter, in this portion here, he left an instruction, in a sense, of something that we can hang on to. An action for us to take. An action for us to work on, so that we can hold on to something that will see us through till the end of this race that we have, or we are running on. And he says here in verse 23, it says this: if indeed you continue in the faith, firmly established and steadfast, and not moved away from the hope of the gospel that you have heard. Firmly established. I went and checked it up. What is it to be established? It says here, to build, so an establishment, a restaurant, or a company that you can build, to install. Maybe you're trying to set up an app, an equipment, a machinery, or to be recognized. You are established as something. You are established as a student that can study. You are established as a student who will bring joy to the class every time by cracking jokes. You are established, by your reputation, like what was shared last week in the sermon. You are established. You are recognized for something. And if I can say that, and I bring it further, what you are recognized in, it is what you are rooted in. You know, in biology, we always teach the students, you know, if we were to track the roots, you know, because trees, as they grow older and grow bigger, their roots will go really far and really deep. And if we were to track from one corner in a park, huge park, and all of a sudden you were to trip over a root, you know, and a root that is above the ground, and you decide to say, I'm going to burn that fella, that tree down for tripping me. And if you follow that root, you will be able to go back to its origin, to that main tree that it is from, to where it is coming from. You know, over this week, I had to go back to Ipoh. It was on Sunday that we received news, quite sudden. My uncle, or my mom's older brother, passed away. It was a very sudden thing. It was cancer, stage 4, and it came very fast. And he went off very fast. And so there was no preparation, there was no last words in a sense. And he went off at home. And even the kids couldn't come back in time, except the kids that was at home taking care of him. And so when my mom heard the news, we planned to go back and be there with the family. And so, but because it was a very immediate thing, it was a very sudden thing, my dad already has pre-planned his work. He has to fly off. He has to go overseas because of work, and they couldn't make any changes to the schedule. And so I represented my dad, you know, as the oldest. I followed my mom. We went back. We drove back to Ipoh. And my mom has this habit. I won't say it's a bad habit, but it's just her, for those who know Auntie Yim. Every time when she's with her relatives or with our relatives, you know how aunties, they will sit together at the kitchen and then they will talk, and they will talk about their kids and stuff like that. And the moment I reached back at Ipoh, everyone came back, you know, all the relatives came back from afar and all, they came back, and they saw me. Wow, Teng! Wow! You know, 毛鬚好多咗嚇. You know, my beard, you know, and all. And then the next thing they will automatically say, wow, 你好高大咗, very big and tall already, 好似你阿爸咁樣咗, like my father. And straight away my mom, 咩? 因為我失停而家, 好似我咁樣. She said, this is like me, not like the father is like me. You know, my mom always has this habit that every time when people were to say, wow, you're like your father, you've got his build, you've got where you got the bone from, you know, and you know they always talk about these things, you've got your shape and all, you're like your father. My mom always, no, yeah, 我失停嘅, 因為我仔. She will always tell them, after that, she will go and firmly establish it by saying, 你睇點解佢行出去? You see after the way he walked out of the kitchen, you look at his backside, exactly like me like that when they walk. And from then on, among all my relatives, they also know, cannot say that I look like my father anymore. I must look like my mom. And the way I walk, the way I talk, the way I do things. I'm firmly established, I'm firmly recognized as that already. No more Ho Jing Kong's son, although I bear that same surname. I'm now Auntie Yim's son, my mom's son, Teng, 我個仔. You know, she has made that firmly in me. But Paul here today, he says this. You know, he revealed a model to us this morning. He says that Christ, or Jesus, in verse 15, he says this. Jesus is the image of the invisible God. He's the reflection. He is the expression. He is to communicate God to us. But how do we reconcile that? You know, I went and dig up, and I went and checked, and in John wrote this. In chapter 1, verse 18, he says this, no one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God, and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made him known. You know, John went on to write in the first chapter, he says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. You know, he called Jesus as the Word. Usually, when we want to express something, when we want to communicate something, we can say something. Words. Or yesterday, when finally MU won 4-1, we can express our joy by shouting and doing something and screaming out. There was an expression of something, to communicate something. But when John wrote this, and John said that, hey, Jesus is the Word. Not only was that an idea of what Jesus is going to do, but it also puts to the function and the purpose of Jesus, the Son, Christ. His function and his purpose is to come and is to reveal, to communicate God to us, to express God to us when he is among us, to show us. You know, Jesus revealed God in his teaching, in his character. You know, every time when Jesus teach in the gospel, and that we can see through it, and through the revelations that we receive when the disciples write in the various letters, you know, he teaches us this. We are taught to love our enemy and to pray for them. We are taught that hatred is equivalent to murder. When we are taught these things, we hear the very words of God. We are taught, hey, you want to have a long life? You want to have a long life? Honor your parents. Honor them. Respect them. Love them beyond who they are. How to be a good parent is a very interesting thing. Maybe currently at our age, being a good parent is not the first thing on our mind. But for those of us who are fast approaching and say we're going to get married and start our family, that will slowly start creeping in. How am I really going to be a good parent? How am I really going to establish a good family? How am I really going to establish the values that God has taught me into my legacy that's going to come? Last week, Josh shared with us that we leave a legacy. These seats can change. The people sitting on it can change. But the legacy we leave behind is for those to come. And for those of us one day when we have our own family, those will be our legacy. But how? How do we leave it behind into them that they know how to live their life? How to be a good spouse? How to be a good spouse? How to make decisions in life? All these things are revealed by God to us through what Jesus has been teaching us. You know, even as we read through the entire Bible, it's all there. And then he's beginning to express it and communicate that to us through his word. The word is communicating to us. You know, and not just that, but also through his character. And I was thinking about it, and in Matthew 9, we always read this story. You know, when Jesus was eating with tax collectors, and then he was rebuked, in a sense, scolded. And then he replied to them, he said that, it is not the healthy who needs a doctor, but the sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. That he came to look for those in need. He came to give love for those who are abandoned, unwanted. It was through his character that he revealed this is God's love for all of us. That there are certain situations and time we feel that, no, I'm not wanted, I'm abandoned, I've got no support, but this is God's promise, I'm always there for you. You know, and Jesus reflected it very well. Jesus was a very good representation of it. You know, we learned that also that Jesus is the way. Because he is the representation of God, he has the authority. Or in fact, he is the only one who has the authority to give the eternal life. Therefore, whosoever believes in him shall have eternal life. They shall not perish. That authority is given unto him. It is for him. He is the representation. At the funeral, my uncle's funeral, in Chinese customs, if you have been to Chinese funerals, so this was a Taoism funeral, if I'm not mistaken. So you will have the priest who will come. Here in Chinese, we call them the lamolo. He will come, and then he will go through the ritual. He will do all the preparation and all, and so that was in the first night. And then second night, I saw again. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, what is this guy doing, you know? He's just keep on chanting and mumbling the same words and all. And then I began to pay a little attention. My Chinese is not very good. And so I tried to understand what is he trying to say, and I pick up some of the things. And then every time when he does this ritual, he will gather the entire family of the deceased. So all my cousins, my auntie has already passed away before my uncle. All my cousins, cousins-in-law, their kids, so they will all stand behind him. You know, so they'll be carrying all the things that they need to carry in the ritual. And then he will be chanting. And then, pam, every time he will chant, pam, he will hit the table. There'll be something calling the spirit to come back. You know, and then I hear and I realize something. That he is actually talking to the God of the underworld. He was actually talking. And then on his paper, on his hand, he's holding a piece of paper, written all my cousins' names, the in-laws' names, and all the grandchildren names. And then I realized, this is the lawyer. This priest is the lawyer on behalf of my uncle, speaking to this God of underworld. These are the children. He has had a full life. Bless them. He is no longer here. Give them prosperity. Give them good health. He is the representation of my uncle in speaking to the God of underworld, because he'll be going down there to live by their belief. He is the representation. And then I begin to think, wow, that's quite a job, isn't it? You have to represent him to speak to the God of underworld to make sure that he can come in. And then I realized that when God comes down here, when Jesus comes down here, he is representing God to all of us in the midst. And then now that we say that we have him, and Paul encourages us, Paul challenges us, hey, continue to be established firmly, that you are recognized, that you will be a representation. Today in our situations, or the situations that you are in, how do you represent God in it? It might not be your own trouble, your own obstacle. Perhaps it is not your family that is going through the situation. But how are you representing God in it? How are you bringing God into that situation? How are you saying that God can step in here and help? How can you say that? Do you say that, or do you bring God into that situation? I think the challenge that Paul puts here today is, how are we as representation of Christ? How do we represent him in situations that we face? Perhaps maybe even here in service. How are we representing? It's very easy. You just have to look left and right. You'll see another person there representing God. And if you look left and right now, is the person, whatever he is doing, representing God here? How representing God at home. In our workplace, in our schools, towards one another, towards those who have yet to know of God's love. You know, it's very easy for us to give it up. Very easy for us to say, to not represent. And that's why Paul challenges us, hey, not only be established, but be established firmly. Holding on firmly. I found that a very interesting metaphor that Paul wrote to these people, the actual readers. To hold firmly, the first thing that came into my mind was that if there's an earthquake, a volcano eruption, the whole ground will shake. So hold firmly, don't move, don't be shaken. Don't be tossed around, about. And this is definitely a metaphor that the actual readers of that time understood very clearly. They were living in an area that's prone to earthquake and volcanic eruption. That's how actually that city died off, brought to ruins. And so they actually automatically understood it. It spoke of to remain firm in an intention that you do not waver, that you are unchanging in your attitude towards your faith. Or in fact, Paul is challenging them. He said, hey, to be unwavering, unchanging in your growth or in your journey of growing in your faith. Do not let anything shake you off. Do not let anything move you away from that path. Do not be easily distracted. It speaks of a perseverance with a spirit of excellence. That transcends, if I can say, just physical strength. But it goes deeper. How sometimes when we watch a sports movie or movies that the genre is sports, we always see this characteristic in the main character. He has well potential in running the race. He has got good potential, extremely good. He has qualified. He's now at the main event. He crossed over the seas, overcome the finance and the family who doesn't want him to go, and he's all the way there now in another country, probably facing, being looked down by his rest of the teammates. The plots are always like that. And then by the time he's there, ready, it's all primed up, he rests well, ready to go. In his mind, he has already plotted out how is he going to run that. And just 10 meters from that finishing line, he has a crippling injury. He trips, he tears something, and then it's no longer the physical strength that can bring him across the line. And then it is now that belief in him to finish it, that will in him that picks him up and says, I'm going to finish it. I believe I can finish it. And even though the other runners are zooming past him, I will finish it. And he picks himself up and continue, firmly finishing it, going for it. When Paul wrote this, it was a very interesting thing. Paul living in the Roman Empire and being house arrest in Rome, he would have a first-hand picture of how the Romans became one of the biggest empire they are, and how it lasted for so long. It was quite a few hundred years. How they managed to become such an empire. You know what the Romans have? What was their belief? The Romans believed this. They are the superior nation over all other nations. So they call the other nations, the neighboring nations, barbarians. They don't know how to live. Look at their houses. They've got no technology. They've got no culture. We are the superior ones. Let us bring the light to them. This is what the Roman says. And that is firmly established in the legionaries, in the soldiers. That the soldiers, when they go to war, they believe it is not just fighting for the emperor. It is not just fighting for the money, the loot that they're going to get, or whatever things they're going to get in the war after. But they believe that they are bringing the light to the other people. They're bringing the light. It's darkness there, you know. Okay, I'm not saying that you are darkness there, but it's a bit darker there, so I'm bringing the light there. And regardless of how tough the journey is, maybe sometimes there are no roads. So the Romans will purposely go and build a road there just to go and attack. And then they say, now you have the Pax Romana, the unity of Rome. And that now you are living under it. You are enlightened. You have the eternal peace. That's what the Romans say. You now have it. That if you are to run around in the entire empire, from east to west, if anyone were to touch your hair, you just have to say, I'm a Roman. And any Roman authority will come and protect you with the soldiers. That was what they believed. And so this is what the soldiers lived in, and they believed, and they went to war. But then in history today, we know otherwise. That peace didn't last very long. That peace didn't last very long until the enemies came and crushed everything. It was fake. It was untrustworthy. It was something very flimsy. That they thought that if they have the walls and their soldiers, they could stay behind it. It will still be there. That there was this Pax Romana, in a sense, this idea to pull the entire empire together. We will all live under this enlightenment, this light. We will not be scattered. But Paul knew otherwise. And that's why Paul wrote there. And Paul wrote this. He said that Jesus is the one who will hold all things together. He knew that Jesus is the one true hub. Rome was the main hub. All transport, all roads go to Rome. But he knew that Jesus is the real hub, the one true hub that will hold all things together. The real deal that will give the eternal peace, that will give the eternal hope. You know, and he says this, you know, and him being that prisoner in Rome, he experienced all this. And he saw all this, and that's why he could write it down. He wrote, even as we read in the passage just now, he said that he reasoned that in his death, Jesus brought all of the chaotic elements in the world together. Everyone was living in their own ways. And he managed to bring it all together. His purpose was to reunite man back with God. He was going to be the one to hold, to pull all come together, that man can be reconciled back with God. Man to man, God to man. This is the true imperial movement, if you can say, of reconciliation. You know, the Romans, they have a very special name for their emperor. They call him the Pontifex Maximus. It's quite a very Roman name. And then when I find out what it means the high priest. So in all your cities, you've got your temples, and each temple, you've got your own priest. And so if you are in that city, you've got a high priest there, so you are in charge of all the temples there. But this is the emperor of the entire empire. And so I give you this title. You are the high priest of the entire empire. You are the mediator. If I have to use the same story just now of my uncle's funeral, he is the lawyer between the people and God. But then we know in Paul's time, Nero was never going to be that. He could never fulfill that. He could never fulfill that. He was never going to be the real high priest. And that's why Paul wrote this. And Paul said this. Paul reasoned that although Nero is mighty in this world, he's actually very puny in comparison to the Creator. The Creator, Jesus, his firstborn over all, the true King of the universe, having all rule and every title that can be given, including the actual high priest. He is the actual Lord of the world and the Savior of the people. This is his title. And Paul encouraged the people. When Paul wrote this letter that to a place that he has never been before, that he will never go, unable to go. that he hopes to go, but he can never go because of his situation, he wrote to encourage them. Even as we wrote this letter, that church was influenced. There were other things going on around. There were all sorts of teaching that was going on around, wrong teachings. That perhaps Jesus is not really that one true one. That he is maybe not God. And that's why when Paul wrote this passage, he wrote, hey, guys, come on. Remember this. Remember this. He is the firstborn overall. He is the firstborn. The one who died and came back to life. First. And because of that, we who have him, we are also afforded this. Given this freely. Not that we deserve it. Not that we have done anything to earn it or could ever do anything to earn it, but it's freely giving to us because of him. And this was what Paul was trying to establish for them. He said, hey, remember, this is the Jesus. This is the Jesus that was in the beginning with God, the Word. That he was the first to be raised from the dead. You know, Paul to them, he told them, hey, guys, do not be shaken. Do not be moved. Although you may live in this kind of environment, physically and also spiritually, things that will come and shake you. Be sure you are established firmly. Be sure that you are holding firmly. You know, I was always taught this. Our shield of faith, you know, in children ministry, we always learn this. Just came back from a children ministry camp. Always they will teach the armor of God and the shield of faith that we have. Now imagine your shield of faith is not just the thing that's on your left arm, forearm. Let's just say it's like a wall around you to protect you from the attacks of the enemy. It is a wall. And it can be crumbled. It can be broken down by things that are happening around us. Situations. Work, not going very well. Friends betraying you, backstabbing you. Family, being abandoned, unloved. Really, man, got purpose in life? The wall begins to crumble. The wall begins to crumble, and slowly an enemy can come in. And that's why we've always been taught, hey, how are you then building your faith in God? How are you building in your relationship with God? How are you ensuring that your wall will be high and deeply rooted enough that it will not come crumbling down easily? You know, we always encourage one another. Hey, are you going for CG? Hey, are you going to service? Hey, in CG, we always ask, is there anything you want to share that God has been good to you throughout the week? Is there any testimony that you want to share? Any good news? You know, when Paul wrote to the Romans, in the book of Romans, he says this, we build our faith by hearing and hearing the word of God. And that's why we always encourage one another. Hey, are you going for CG? Then it's an extra place where we build our faith. When we're hearing that, hey, God is real. God is real. I can see that in your life. I can see that in your life. I can see that God in your situations. You are giving the testimony, the evidence to it. God is real. God is real. God is real. And if God is real in your situation, God can be real in mine. God can be real in those around me. God can be real that I can bring him and represent him in those situations. That is only if I firmly hold onto the right thing. If not, I'll be like the Romans. The Roman Empire, shattered, gone, disappeared. But Paul told us to hang on, to not be unmoved in one thing. To not, here it says, do not move away from the hope of the gospel that you have. This hope that you already have, the hope that last week we talked about is already installed for you in heaven. This hope, actually, you already have. It is with you. This hope of gospel is already dwelling in you. And that's Jesus himself. We have Him. This hope. This hope might not be flimsy, might not be untrustworthy. But if we were to put our hope in something else, it might be flimsy. It might fail us. You know, the first thing I learned when I became a teacher in a school was this. And I have the privilege to teach science in the arts class. And so if in the SPM equivalent, that would be our general science. But in the IGCSE syllabus, it's called the combined science. And so I have the privilege to teach them alongside with the biology students in the more science-based classes. And they struggle. The art class students, they will struggle in their combined science. But they are very good in their accounts, in their business studies, in their calculation. It's just that in this combined science, they find it hard to pick up and to move in it. And they put all their trust in me. In the first month, I realized that, oh my goodness, I was fearful, I was shocked, I was worried. And then I also have the honor to be also their class teacher. And so every morning I meet them and I told them, hey guys, you know Mr. Ho will fail you? Like how my hair fails me, because they always call me Botak Ho. So they will, when they see me coming up to class, they'll shout, hey, Mr. Botak Ho! They'll call me like that. And I told them, I said, hey guys, seriously, I can't fail you like how my body parts are failing. And if you put all your trust in me, I will fail you. But there's one person that will never fail you, and that's God. You know, and at the beginning, they didn't believe me. And I told them, it's okay. It's okay. You don't believe. But can you permit me just to pray for you every day? Every day, when the first thing in the morning, when I meet you here in class, I'll pray for you. And then when I go home, I'll pray for you again. Is that okay? And the first batch of students that I had, when I taught biology, there was one student who found it very difficult to do her biology. The student to do the biology. And without fail for 1.5 years, that student has never passed biology. That's the grades, never passed. And until the end, I persevered with that student and I prayed. I said, God will give you more than what you ask for. I didn't know that in her heart she was actually, okay, I keep on saying her, okay, so yeah, it's a female student. That in her heart, she was actually just praying, God, just let me pass. So she followed after me because I asked her to pray along, and she just asked God, pass only, just pass. And the day came, she got a high B. Way more than she asked for. Way more than she expected herself. Way more than I expected, because when she knocked on the staff room door just to show me, she was crying. And I had a shock in my life. I thought something happened to her. What happened? She was crying. If she had put her hope in me, I don't think she would even get a pass. But she put the hope in God. And she trusted. And it came to pass for her. You know, it's a hope that can reconcile all things through Him, whose grace and love alone is not only sufficient, but is always available, and whose one desire is to make us unblemished, so that we can always be in His presence forever. That is the hope that we have in Him. Throughout this entire year, I had the privilege of meeting a family who has a new member in that family. But the sad thing about this is, at a very young age, this new member of the family is abandoned. Whether is it by choice or by circumstances or by situations, mom is no longer there, father is not around all the time. And only did I had to go and learn that at such an age, I thought that, hey, so young, the child wouldn't even know the parents are not around. Then only I knew that actually as young as it is, children would already be able to feel and to realize the abandonment. That at such a young age, that new family member already is going through it. And and the family had no idea how the child is going to come out. The fear, there's no parents to grow him up, to bring him up, to guide him, to teach him, to show him love, to know how to respond in certain situations. It seems that all hope is snuffed out in that family. This is the latest this is the legacy. This is the one that will continue the line. And yet, the necessary things around it is not there to help him. How would he turn out? The fear. And then only did we learn, or only did we share to that family, there's a hope. If there's a hope upon the rest of the family members, can easily fail. Humans will always fail. Humans will always let you down. Humans also have their emotions. On a bad day, they might just let the person down and turn away and don't love you and don't care about you. But if this one hope that you are placed in God, He can do this. God can bring the forgiveness to the abandonment. And sometimes we have that hatred within us, that bitterness, the anger. We don't know where is it coming from, that is so easily triggered. Sometimes it could be because we feel we are abandoned because of certain things. We are unaware of it. And yet this hope in God can bring that forgiveness, that reconciliation to that brokenness, that pure and whole healing of that hurt. Only God can do that. And that resides in this hope that we already have, that is already belonging to us. That hope that I'm keep on talking about, for us to hang on firmly. Because Paul asks us, hey, establish yourself in that faith. And that faith must come from somewhere. It must come from you having an action of holding firmly onto that hope. But it actually depends on what you're holding on to. What is that hope? Today, I have to leave you with this. Where are you placing your hope in? Perhaps you already know you are already placing a hope into something that you have to move away from, so that you can go on to a hope whose foundation is unmovable, unshakable, regardless of is it physical or spiritual or anything that's going on around it. It is still not going to fail you. That hope that will keep you firmly standing in this journey of growing your faith. That how come God, I'm serving you, I love you, and yet these things happen to my family. And yet these things happen to me. Where is the breakthrough, God? Where is this breakthrough, God? Where is this future, God? Where is this hope? What are you putting your hope in today? New friends, this morning, what are you putting your hope in? If you do not know Jesus, this is the one hope that we know that we can always put in, that will never fail us. When the author of this letter, he wrote this, the first thing that he established for all his readers was this: this is the Supreme One. This is the Creator of all. This is God. Do not be shaken, do not be moved. Do not be moved, do not be moved. Do not place your hope into something that will fail you. You know, the image that came to me was when Pastor Anna shared that story about how the airplane, it will so easily bring you spiraling. Do not put your hope into something that will definitely fail you. Not now. Not maybe down the year. There's only a few more months. A few more weeks. The year. Next year or 10 years. But it will definitely fail you. But this is God. That His promises are here. That we can always remember that He will never let us down because He is faithful to His promise. That if this is the promise that He has given us, that we are assured that we will never lose it. That is the hope that we can get, or the hope that we have.